This is the How Did We Get Here podcast with your host, Nancy Jackson.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to How Did We Get Here, the podcast. I'm Nancy Jackson. I'm your host today. And the number one thing that I am asking myself is, why do people hate Donald Trump so much? They absolutely despise the man. And I've actually investigated a little bit just to see what other people have come up with. And these are some of the words they've used to describe him. He's dangerous, unpredictable. He's a sexual predator. He's been unfaithful to his wives. He's been convicted of business fraud. And then he's a cheat, dishonest. He's vulgar. He uses bad language. He made the pandemic worse because he questioned the informed people that were in charge, and he made it worse, apparently. And he's a polarizing figure in America, and he's polarized the whole country. And that he's the one that stirred up that insurrection on January 6th, and which is one of the worst events in American history, apparently. And he's blamed for the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which eliminated or made abortion illegal again. And so there are people that are really angry about that one. And he's the first criminally convicted president in American history, apparently. And he just would not graciously accept the election results in 2020 when he lost to Joe Biden. And he refused to accept that it was a free and fair election. And he claimed that there was fraud, and he just wouldn't accept the results. He never did accept them. And he's been scorned and criticized and condemned for that ever since. So, I mean, those are just some of the things. The crazy thing is, before he decided to run for office, Donald Trump was kind of like the darling of New York. He was in the spotlight. He had a TV show. He was very famous. He was kind of idolized by people. And he would be on shows, even like The View. Joy Behar thought he was great, and kind of was friendly toward him. And other people that invited him on their programs and interviewed him, and he was just well thought of. He is different for sure, but he was well liked and accepted. There was none of this scorn and condemnation of him. It was only when he decided to run for office, and the minute he came down that escalator and made his grand entrance announcing his candidacy for the president, everything, it was like a ton of bricks fell on him. Everybody started to criticize him, and everybody changed in their attitude toward him and became very suspicious of him and extremely critical of him. And I remember when Barack Obama was president, that I used to check my computer for email, and there would always pop up a message about Barack Obama. and something great that he had just done. It was sort of like maybe in the news section, and it was always good news. He had all these great things that he was doing, and he was making it possible for people to get loans, and then there were the free phones, and everything that he did was just, you know, great. And then when Donald Trump was elected, that all changed too, because immediately all I saw was all the terrible things that Donald Trump was doing. And he was barely even inaugurated, and they were criticizing him constantly. So, anyway, I just noticed that, and I'm just mentioning that. And so, that was just a question that I had. Why do they hate him so much? And what's behind that thing? But I also have some other questions about what's going on. Why is there such a push to change our country? I mean, I know that I nag about change, and change is hard, and why are there so many changes? And this is why I have this podcast, How Did We Get Here? Because if you look back, it's just one continuous change after another over time. And the only thing constant is change. I admit that. But I noticed that there is a push now for changes that public actually is resisting. And I don't know why. Things such as the transgender um, surgeries for children, and it seems they shout about it so much, you would think that it's a unanimous um, agreement that this should be advocated, supported, and set in stone so that all these poor suffering children can be saved. And and yet I just kind of don't believe it. I don't believe that it's the magnitude that the media presents, that it's such a big issue that has to be imposed on the entire country. So that's one particular item that I question. And I think that there are a lot of things that are being pushed that the public is actually kind of hesitant about or reluctant to accept. And I'm wondering who is initiating the push and all these changes. And I don't know. In particular, I can't name any one person. I don't think that it's Joe Biden. I don't think that he is the. I don't think he has the wherewithal, the vision, the power, the resources. He's not initiating this himself. Sometimes I think that he is being used to put these things forward, and they're really not part of his. Well, I shouldn't say not part of his policies, but I just kind of wonder where they're coming from. Let's put it that way. And why must traditional values and customs be eliminated? I don't understand why that has to be. Should we erase our history? Are we ashamed of our history? Should we be denying what really has happened in our country? Was it always that bad? I know that there are historians who have painted a very bleak picture of our country. But on the other hand, there are many, many good things that have happened. And I just don't think that, I don't know why we have to tear everything down. I'm against that myself. And so I'm kind of wondering, what are the big issues that are really on us these days? And what, I mean, the number one thing that I think of is immigration and the border crisis. the fact that there are so many people flowing into our country without being vetted or in any way checked before they come in. And I've heard numbers um, anywhere from 10 million to 30 million illegal or undocumented aliens or immigrants who have crossed the border and entered our country without our vetting them, checking them, inoculating them. Just to check for diseases would be helpful. And I just don't think it's good for our country. And if there is that volume of people that are coming in, how do we support that? How do we support those people? Um, I think that is a big issue, and I'm just laying it out there. I'm not trying to advocate for, I'm not pushing anything right now. I'm just mentioning it as one of the big issues in our country. The second one is the cost of living and the rising costs, and the fact that everything has gone up and it's more expensive 20%, 30%, whether it's food, drugs, fuel, gasoline, transportation. Everything has gone up. It's just really bad. And if people are limited in their income or if they're on a fixed income, that's not going up to match the costs. So it's a real dilemma for a lot of people. Not everybody, but for a lot of people, it's a big deal. And I do think the issue of abortion is a really big issue. Since Roe versus Wade was overturned, there are people now reacting and they don't want to go back to the way things were before. And the irony is that, for instance, in my state, they have a constitutional amendment on the ballot. And the irony is that if the amendment passes, it doesn't take us back to the period before Roe versus Wade. This takes us to another universe where things are extremely different and everything has changed. And because it is an amendment, it's almost impossible to change it if it would pass. And there are, I mean, it's like worse than Roe versus Wade for people that are pro life and that want to protect um, unborn babies and uh, the life of an unborn child, even up to be able to abort and kill a child in the ninth month of pregnancy, to me seems barbaric. But that's part of, anyway, if this passes in, and it's in our uh, it's on the ballot for this election, so it's a big deal. So anyway, I would say abortion, and I think Kamala Harris is using the abortion issue as one of her main. Um, it's a battle cry for her that a woman's right to choose. And really, what it is it's a woman's right to choose abortion. And that's what she is advocating. And so it's a very hotly contested issue. And then I think education and children is another big deal. I think there are parents that feel like they've lost their power of voice, and that the formation of children is being taken over by the state, and they don't have as much they don't have the rights that they would like to have, that they are losing ground in that area. I'm just mentioning them as big issues that I see in our country at the moment. And I think that a lot of this, I don't know if you've ever thought about globalism, but another name for it, these are all just terms that are kind of floating around. There's globalism, there's the Great Reset, there's one world government, and one world religion. And these are all terms that are floating around right now. And I think that, for instance, with the immigration issue, um, if you are a globalist, you are supportive of open borders and letting everybody in without any limits. And and for a globalist, this is the way it ought to be all over the world. Who are the people that are doing this? Who are these globalists? And if it's not the globalists, who is it that is kind of, well, I'll give you an example. Um, you know the movie The Wizard of Oz. It's a classic, American classic movie. It was filmed in 1939, but it has a lot of universal truths in it, and people love the movie forever. And Dorothy is a young girl in Kansas. There's a tornado, and she gets swept away, and she wakes up in this strange place called Oz when she's trying to find her way back home. She just wants to go home. And she runs into different characters in her uh, quest to find her way back home. And she runs into a scarecrow and a tin man and a lion. And each one of them is seeking something, whether it's courage or brains or I forget what the other one was doing. Anyway, they each had some quality that they were seeking themselves. And they heard about, so the four of them teamed up and decided that they would go together and try to find the great Oz, who was like the big know it all that knew everything in the city of Oz, and he controlled everything. And so they followed the yellow brick road and went to find the great Oz. And when they finally get to the big castle, and they were scared as could be, um, they found that he was hidden. It was a secret. Nobody had ever seen this Oz. He was hidden behind this big green satin curtain. And yet he had all this power. He could pull the lever and steam would blow up, or he would make some noises and he would make things happen. And it was all done very secretively behind this curtain. And so I'm using that image um, to, well, actually, what happened with Dorothy and the and her three friends, they found out that they went behind the curtain and they saw who it was. And here it was, just a man with a bunch of noisemakers who was pulling all these strings and making things happen. But he had bamboozled all the people, and everybody was terrified of him, and they did whatever the great Oz said. And anyway, so they've sort of found out who he was, and he was exposed. But I'm using that image of the great Oz, and I'm asking, who is the great Oz in our world today? Who's hiding behind that green curtain? And because there is somebody back there, because there's somebody that's making all this stuff happen, and curious minds want to know, and including my own. and there are some names in here and terminology that you may or may not have heard of them, but I'm just going to share it with you. One is that this is my version of what is going on, and I'm just going to go over it with you. Uh, I propose a few points. Number one, evil exists. I wish it didn't, but evil is more blatantly obvious now than ever before. And there are some people who have enormous power and they misuse it. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's a quote from Lord Acton, a British kind of a political commentator. And I think those words are very true. Power does corrupt, and absolute power without any kind of checks or balances is terrifying because you can just do anything you want. And you can squash people, you can misuse people, and you can use them in the wrong way, and that's what's wrong with it. And then a few people, and this is literally just a few people control 99.9% of all the money and wealth in the world, and they misuse that. Now, there are good people. I'm not saying everybody's bad. There are good people, and they do want to do good. They may not be perfect. Nobody's perfect in this world, but they still want to do good, not evil. And they're trying, but it's kind of a hard battle. We're just really kind of stuck in it. We're caught up in a battle. It's a spiritual battle. It's between good and evil. And there's much confusion, discouragement. My goodness, people are so discouraged. And there's so much turmoil. What we need is some heroes and we need leadership, and it will come. We just have to keep trying. So, in general, that is kind of my my general statement. But I also want to say that um, there's something called the Great Reset, and a few people with a lot of money, influence, and an agenda have been working toward and waiting for an opportunity to put into place a new order of things worldwide. They had the perfect opportunity in 2020 to bring it into reality. The coronavirus crisis was the perfect trigger to set things in motion. This great reset is a rebranding of what in the last decade was known as the New World Order. These terms are kind of interchangeable. New World Order, anyway, the Great Reset. And then another term is the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And it's with technology and all the changes that and advances in technology. It's emerging. What we're coming up with now and facing is a merging of digital, physical, and biological systems, and relying on technology and technological surveillance rather than the rule of law to maintain public order. And in communist countries, like in China, there's surveillance everywhere. There's surveillance cameras everywhere. And people are being reported if they misbehave or they do anything, and all kinds of rights are taken away from them. It's frightening. Anyway, the fourth industrial revolution will transform not only how we live and interact, but who we are as human beings. Man will ultimately be merged with the machine. I know that sounds so freaky, but um, there are people that are aiming for this. And the World Economic Forum is another entity that you need to kind of become familiar with. Um, it's made up of world government leaders. It's not a government in its own, it's just an organization. It's made up of world government leaders, corporate leaders, non governmental organizations or NGOs, and journalists, activists, cultural leaders, and artists. They're all ready to collaborate to push this World Economic Forum's technocratic transhumanist mission forward. And they use, I mean, they use things, they use fear to manipulate people, and they terrified people with this COVID virus. And to think that there is a threat of terrible suffering and death from a disease for which there was no cure. Isn't that terrifying? It scared the daylights out of everybody, and they had everybody under their control. And they just listed the number of deaths and the number of hospitalizations and the stories about critical care deficiencies and ventilators and contagion. And oh my goodness, it was just a nightmare. And it was very demoralizing. And people were shamed for being sick, and they were blamed for spreading diseases just by breathing. And people were just um, you weren't allowed to speak, sing, cough, or breathe. The spread of the disease was your fault. And oh my, I mean, it was just awful. It was very dehumanizing and really bad for human beings. And so the next step was this dehumanization, and the idea of making people wear masks so that you couldn't even see who they were as a person. Um, it was just really a very dehumanizing thing for people to have to go through, and and it was all normalized, and we were supposed to just live this way and accept it. And this normalization led to behavior modification. Um, and they came up with things like contact tracing. If they found out you were sick and that you had gone to a restaurant, oh my, they were going to shut down the restaurant, and then they were going to uh, trace every person you had had any contact with, quarantining all kinds of people. I mean, it was just like something out of it was dystopian. It was out of Brave New World, or I don't know. It was just a nightmare. Well, we all know it was a nightmare. And then the social distancing. You weren't supposed to go near other people for fear that you would contaminate them. I mean, this is just so contrary to what it means to be a human being. We are social beings. We're not meant to be isolated like that. And then basically the objective was to come up with this controlled world, and through conditioning to get people to accept this kind of life. And the total objective was sustainable, inclusive environments, which really means a controlled numbers of people. And if you could eliminate a billion here or a billion there, so be it. That was part of the deal. They wanted to reduce the population by millions of people. So anyway, this has all been a big nightmare, I know, and I don't want to go on for too long. And um, but what I wanted to say was that there are some people that are actually thinking this way, and we need to be aware of it. And there are different, like secret organizations, or ones that operate under the radar that don't get much public attention. And one of them is the Trilateral Commission. And you may want to check it out on your own. But it was the brainchild for this was um, David Rockefeller. He founded the organization in 1973, and his sidekick and mastermind, our collaborator in this, was Zbigniew Brzezinski. Um, and they came up with this concept. And this is a quote from Brzezinski. The nation state, that is a country, United States, Mexico, Canada, whatever, the nation state as a fundamental unit of man's organized life has ceased to be the principal creative force. International banks and multinational corporations are acting and planning in terms that are far in advance of the political concepts of a nation state. What that means is these multinational corporations and organizations and big banks are smarter than individual countries. And the plan was to eliminate these countries and create a one world government. And if you don't believe me, well, I don't know what to tell you, but one of the strategies that they had was to destabilize different governments, and then they would cause chaos, and then they would come in and solve their problems and kind of take over. And it was all done through financing and then pulling the money. Anyway, that's another story, but I'm not going into that. And then there was another organization. It's still in existence. The Trilateral Commission is in existence. And there is another one that was also thought up by the same kind of people. David Rockefeller is a very big player in all of this. And it's the Council on Foreign Relations. And it's an American think tank that specializes in U.S. foreign policy and international relations. That one was founded in 1921. And it's supposed to be an independent and nonpartisan nonprofit organization. It's based in New York City, and they have an office in Washington, D.C. But their members include senior politicians, numerous secretaries of state, CIA directors, bankers, lawyers, professors, corporate directors, and CEOs, and senior media figures. It works closely with the Trilateral Commission in indirect ways, although it is considered to be an American entity. Anyway, this is all kind of a sinister story that I'm spinning here, and I'm not going to try to draw any conclusions. I'm just pointing these entities out to you so you know that they exist and you can check them out on your own. And there are other secret societies that operate that have been in existence since the 1700s. And I'm not going to name any more names there, but I'm just telling you that they are out there, and we need to be aware of it and to realize that their goals are open borders, regional governments run by unelected commissioners, one world religion, and a new world order. And it sounds like a nightmare to me, but anyway, that's somebody else's idea, but a good idea. Anyway, I'm going to run out of time here, so I'm going to have to stop. And I appreciate you tuning in, and I hope it wasn't too long, because I know these things get boring after a while. But if you are interested in it, I'd love to hear from you. You can email me at howdowegethere1884@gmail.com. And be sure to hit the like button and share it with your friends and tell other people about it. The more you spread the word, the more the podcast can be sent out to other people. But for now, thank you so much for joining me. And I hope that you will come back again, and let's all pray for peace and sanity, and that the good guys win. God bless you all, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to the How Did We Get Here podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and share this episode with your friends and family. For more information and to connect with Nancy, email howdidwegethere1884@gmail.com.